Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go! All right, let's get to it. Another installment of Ballsy Uncut. And I'm really looking forward to this. The Our Balls Are Bigger postgame show coming up after the Riders Red Blacks game in Saskatchewan to kick off week number 1. That goes down on Thursday. And myself and Kai Bear will be taking your calls. We're taking phone calls. Now, last year we did it via video where you could nix your camera and kind of do it like a phone call. This time you'll call a number and that'll be it. We'll talk just like a regular phone-in show. A lot of people know me from that, from the pre and the post-game show. I kind of interesting because that's what I always got into radio for, was to be the voice, like a play-by-play guy, especially for football. Fortunately, I got to realize that dream for a couple of seasons. Still get to call the Thunder games, which I'm happy about. But people still come up to me and say, "Oh, I used to love driving home listening to you, going home to Weyburn or PA or Saskatoon with McCullough and with Cates and with Best and all these guys." So I'm back doing that. I love it. Kyrese Bear brings his flair, the Angry Bird, and his perspective. And, of course, we'll be joined from time to time with the former Regina Ram and former high school football coach in Regina and surrounding area. That'd be Ryan Hall, who still runs tackling camps and football instructional camps across the province. And he joined me last year. So it's the Our Balls Are Bigger postgame show. If you'd like a shirt, and actually I got a message here. Give me 1 second here. I got a message from Ricky. Ricky said, "Ballsy, where can I order one of these?" And he took a snapshot of the shirt. You just DM me. DM me at Ballsy Uncut on Facebook or Ballsy Uncut on X or at Michael Ball on Facebook or The Real Ballsy on X or on Instagram too. Or you can text me 306-526-7979. I don't mind giving my number out for a great cause. The money goes to Glenn Love's Love Life ALS Foundation, of course, former Rider, Stampeder, Alouette linebacker among the teams he played for. Won the Grey Cup with the Stamps back in 2014. He's got ALS. We're trying to help him out. A guy who entertained us on the field, and now we're trying to help him battle that terrible, terrible disease. All right. Let's get right to it. Coming up here, we're going to hear from Gene Principe in Edmonton, getting set for the Stanley Cup final. The first time ever, I believe. I'll ask him this. I don't know, can't remember if he's been there as the sideline or the rinkside host of a Stanley Cup final. I know he's covered them before, but I think this is his first time. He'll join us in our new feature called Behind the Glass. So we're talking to Gene Principe during the hockey season. And, of course, hockey season's wrapping up, but it's something we just fired up here on Ballsy Uncut. So Gene will join us from Edmonton. Oilers getting ready to take on the Florida Panthers in a Stanley Cup rematch. Just the fourth time that's happened in NHL history. It was Islanders and Oilers. That was the last time it involved the Canadian team. It was Penguins and Detroit. It's been Oilers and Florida, and the fourth one is escaping me right now off the top of my head. Anyway, it's happened 4 times. Pittsburgh, Detroit, Edmonton, Florida, Edmonton, the Islanders, and there was one other time. Just drew a old man blank. Anyway, sure somebody will fill me in. Anyway, it's the 4th time in league history that's happened, and so looking forward to that one starting up here on Wednesday. So we'll talk to Gene, and we're also going to talk out on the left coast to our friend Giulio Caravatta, longtime color commentator in the BC Lions radio network and a former Canadian quarterback in the CFL with the BC Lions. Get his read on the one big storyline from each team going into the season. And without further ado, let's go with Ballsy's best bets for this first week in the Canadian Football League, starting with the Week 1 matchup, the Ottawa Red Blacks at Saskatchewan. The Rough Riders will be a force this year, I believe, even though they are banged up coming into this game, especially along the offensive line. I think the Riders, when it's all said and done, 1-2 in the CFL West, if their quarterbacking can be stable and healthy with Harris and Jake Mayer. But like I said, they're already in a bit of a funk here with the offensive line. And at safety, too, with Jackson Ford being injured. Lacombo's back, but he's got, his hamstring. He was out for a lot of training camp with a hamstring injury. So, Riders, Ottawa. Red Blacks add William Stanback, add Geno Lewis. Drew Brown, another year at the controls. Bob Dice rolling in here with the Ottawa Red Blacks. Got a new deal there in Ottawa, a contract extension. I'm going to pick an upset, week number 1. And it's not me being an anti-Rider guy, and don't ask, I don't have anything behind it, but I think Ottawa beats Saskatchewan in a stunner, like 26-24. I think the Ottawa Red Blacks open up 1-0 with a rare victory on the road in Saskatchewan. And last I saw, far from a sellout. I think they're about 5,000 shy. Hopefully fans will show up and support the Rough Riders because, they're a good product to watch with Corey Mace, Mark Mueller, and the gang coaching the squad. So I got Ottawa. I've got the Alouettes beating the Argos in the East rematch. Of course, no Chad Kelly, Nick Arbuckle, who replaced him in the East final. And then with his decent heroics, he wasn't spectacular, but he didn't hurt the team and led them to victory in the Grey Cup against Winnipeg, that being Nick Arbuckle. But going up against Moss and the Alouettes on home turf, I'm going with Montreal probably by 8 to 10 points in that one. So that's how I see that one shaken down. The other games in week number 1 in the CFL, the Tiger Cats at the Stampeders. Vernon Adams' debut. And Bo Levi Mitchell comes to Calgary as a Hamilton Tiger Cat quarterback again. So Bo Levi Mitchell, who was going to be on the bench. Bo was going to be on the bench for Taylor Powell last year. Powell gets hurt. Bo comes off the bench and has an MOP type of season against Vernon Adams Jr., who finally will try to be that undisputed leader the team's been waiting for. And last year he was, but got hurt. But he's taking the reins with the Stampeders, with the Horsemen, under Dave Dickinson, who's got to be under a little bit of heat. They've had 2 subpar seasons in Calgary, and they're not used to that around there, needing to build up that fan base, kind of like their Northern Alberta brethren there in Edmonton. I've got Calgary holding off Hamilton like 27-23. And then to close out the week, it's Nathan Rourke quarterbacking the BC Lions against the new look Edmonton Elks with Mark Killam at the controls in his first ever game as a head coach in the regular season, the Edmonton Elks. Trey Ford, the quarterback there. 2 Canadian quarterbacks going at it. That's awesome. A Canadian quarterback over here and Rourke, another Canadian over there. Rourke's trying to get back to his 2022 form. Trey Ford's been given the money, and you'd assume a bit of a longer leash to make things happen in Edmonton. And it's the Snoop Dogg game, as Mar Doman does such a great job trying to promote and put his money where his mouth is in Vancouver and BC. Really love what he's doing there. They're, as we talk here, close to a sellout, around 1,000 to be sold, but probably will be a sellout, well over 50,000 for the game. Now, will a lot of them leave at halftime? Who knows? Maybe they're there for Snoop Dogg, but if even a fraction of that catches on to BC Lions football and loves the greatest form of football on the planet, maybe they'll be back. Hopefully they'll be back. That's what he's trying to do. I just love it. Kudos to Amar Doman and what he's doing in BC. In that game, I've got Edmonton winning that one. They need to win. They have to get the fans back in Edmonton. I think Mark Killam probably has the most pressure of any coach in the West, followed by, I would say, Dave Dickinson and then Corey Mace. Yes, it's Mace's second season, but like I've said before, the Riders fans, they've already seen a home playoff game. They've already seen the movie where they lose to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It is Grey Cup or bust for the Riders, I would think. They have to get to the Grey Cup. So Corey Mace is, the honeymoon might be over. Not saying fans are going to run him out of town. I hope they don't. I think he's a great coach, but I think he's under pressure. Dickinson, probably the coach with the second most heat. And even though he's the rookie coach, Mark Killam has to hit the ground running. I'm not saying he's going to get fired or anything like that, but I think he's got a little bit of pressure on him. A lot of pressure on them. Let's go. Opens up on the road, doesn't open up at home. Edmonton the last couple of years been better on the road, playing with house money, big crowd, BC, Snoop Dogg. Lions expected to win. Will Rourke be 2022 Rourke or last year's version of Nathan Rourke coming back with the NFL hangover? I'm going the Elks, say like 30-28. An exciting game under the big top. If it's closed, I don't know. Maybe it'll be open. But it's in Vancouver, my second favorite stadium to... Actually, let me fix that. My third favorite stadium to watch a game. I love Saskatchewan, I love Winnipeg, and I love Vancouver. I think the Riders have the nicest stadium when you encompass the players' facilities and everything. The Bombers have the best place to watch a game in terms of the now sitting in the stands and how the canopy keeps the sound in, the crowd noise and everything like that, and just the game day vibes. It feels very much Saskatchewan-ish when Hobson was running the team from 2006 to about 2015, just based on my only appearance there as a fan. Didn't really notice it much when I broadcast the Rider games, but I did going as a fan. And nothing to do with my kid playing on the Bombers or potentially playing on the Bombers. Just the whole vibe walking up to the stadium. And then I love Vancouver, what they got going there. Nice setting down there and in and outside the stadium. Hoping more fans will get catch the BC Lions bug with everything Amar Doman's doing. So I got the Red Blacks in an upset. The Alouettes, the favorite team to win there. The Stampeders, I don't know if they're favored, but I'm going to pick them to win on home turf. And then the Elks in an upset over the BC Lions. Ballsy's best bets. What do you say? Just reach out in the comment section. Let's, debates are always great. Lists and predictions are always great. And that's why before this show's done, the other day I gave my top 20 CFL players. Like the NFL does the top 100, TSN does the top 50. I gave with help of other football minds, anonymously, my top 20 CFL players. Once again, with other football minds who want to remain anonymous. Current players, former players, current coaches and execs, a couple former coaches and execs, and some broadcasters. I have compiled the top 20 Canadians in the CFL because C is important. Unlike some of these guys that go verbally with me on X about how the CFL draft isn't important and who cares and all this stuff. I'll tell you this right now. The formula's never changed and it never will change. Great quarterbacking and your Canadians, starters, and depth is what's going to win you a Grey Cup. It hasn't changed and never will change as long as they keep the ratio in. And I'll tell you what. I've said this long before my son was a part of this league or potentially a part of this league. If we didn't have the ratio, you'd see very, very, very few Canadians ever play just because of natural American coaching bias. If you're used to a kid in Mississippi or you come from Tennessee or you come from the American college ranks, you're going to bring your own guys up here. You're not even going to look for the kid in Regina or Balgony or Delisle or Rosetown or Rose Valley. You're not going to do it. So I'm just thankful there is a ratio so kids like Jackson Finley and Ethan Vibert and Daniel Weeb and Deshaun Mims and Logan Furland and Ethan Ball and those kind of guys, Boschman in Montreal, those kind of guys get their shot. That's what I'm most thankful for. And I actually, with how great the Canadians are, when the CBA's done, I'd love to see them at it. Add 10 starters. Why not? Canadians are showing they can play. They can. The quality of the game is not going down. A lot of the great Canadian players are the stars of this league. Look at their paychecks. Terrell Ford's the highest paid DB. Robbie Smith, one of the highest paid defensive players, if not the highest paid defensive player in the CFL. Nathan Rourke, Trey Ford going at it. 2 Canadians at quarterback. It's outstanding. This is the best time to be a Canadian football fan, for sure. All right. We'll be back with more. Okay, Gene, so I know you've been around the Stanley Cup final, obviously. Last year, the Oilers there. But were you the national rinkside host last year, too? I can't remember.
No. They decided to plant. Get the joke? Plant.
Yes, I did.
I mean, they're this year, and I can tell you this much: whenever the handshakes happen after the deciding game, they will be Fern handshakes. Okay.
I love
Got that out of the way. No. It's funny because Michael, great to be with you again. I was not, but you when you cover the team and you still are involved in this case, Cup final. I was a news reporter for Sportsnet Central, so you're there, kind of like it's not like doing the broadcast for sure. That would be diminishing that role, but you're still there and you see and you hear and you feel everything that goes on. But being the host of the Stanley Cup final, that's different. That's special. That's an honor. And I really look forward to not hopefully screwing it up.
Well, you're not going to screw it up. You're the best at what you do in the business. And so, like, how much of like when a referee refs a Stanley Cup final, or, how much of a feather in your cap is this for your
Yeah.
broadcasting career?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. 38 years in the business, 58 years of age. Now, a lot of this has to do with the team. So just to be clear, if it's the Calgary Flames in the Cup final, or the Vancouver Canucks, or the Vegas Golden Knights, I don't think I'm there. But it was kind of like you do round one and you kind of make the cut like a referee would, and then you do round two and you make the cut again. Now you're into the conference final, and just before game 5, I got a call saying that Sportsnet was interested in me hosting the final. Was I interested? I said, yeah. I nearly hopped out of the Uber. I honestly, being an Edmonton kid, I short of putting on a pair of skates and being on the ice, this would be the closest thing to being involved in a Stanley Cup final without being involved in a Stanley Cup final.
I've talked to Jack Michaels a few times. I consider him a friend. I really consider Chris Cuthbert a friend. We've gotten close. But what's it like going from like Jack and Louie all season to going to Craig and CC and Craig?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, Jack and Louie, I work with day in and day out. I see over and over again. We travel together. We prep together. We go out for dinner together. We spend a lot of time together. So what ends up happening is you're just as, I guess, as good of friends with them as you are with the people that you would consider your lifelong friends that you've known since junior high or high school or university or wherever you went. Craig and Chris, I mean, first of all, Craig is somebody that I covered. And then Chris is somebody that I watched. Chris worked in Edmonton at CBC and, did the Olympics in LA and has been a fantastic broadcaster. Different, but equally enjoyable, equally satisfying to be part of it. I mean, I don't make any decisions on who does what and when and where. So being a part of a team, another team, is different in the beginning. I've worked a few games with CC and Craig, but not like entire series. So great. I mean, Chris is one of the greatest guys you'll meet, as you know, and Craig is heck of an analyst. Like Craig is dialed in on what he does, and I find, like Louis, he picks up on stuff that sort of the average hockey fan maybe doesn't see, doesn't notice. So being part of two great teams is really a great chance for me.
I know you're busy, and so I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but I got to ask this question because I've been on that side of the mic, not at your level. But so you're an Edmonton guy through and through.
Yeah.
CC worked in Edmonton. Craig Smith coached the Oilers in 2006 and won the Stanley Cup, but you're doing a national broadcast.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's Canada versus the U.S., but there are Canadian kids on the Panthers.
Oh, yeah.
So do you have to do it kind of like a double check where you're not all pro Oilers? You know what I mean?
For sure. And I think it's just, I'm trying to word this properly, but it's being respectful of the opposing team. This isn't a regional Oilers game in February. It's June, and it's a Stanley Cup final, and the Florida Panthers are the Stanley Cup champions here. So to be the best, you got to beat the best, and the Oilers are trying to do that. But my intention is every game, and in fact, media day, um, I spent time talking to Bill Zito. I chatted with Gustav Forsling. I mean, I'm trying to tell the best stories about these players, whether they were, a Panther or whether they were an oil drop. I'm not here to. This isn't my show and tell regarding the Oilers. This is about explaining um, to people who the people are that are wearing these jerseys, either trying to hold on to the Stanley Cup or trying to win it. And so it is, of course, I grew up in Edmonton and that, but I don't feel like it's a challenge or there's a huge degree of difficulty in me being an unbiased reporter slash host. In fact, I like the opportunity of telling stories about other people. And, listen, I think one of the things I learned, and you probably did too, Michael, in the beginning when you get into a business, sure, I'm from Edmonton. You're supposed to dislike Calgary. You can't like Calgary. And then I meet Jerome McGinley and I go, wow, Jerome McGinley is a pretty nice guy. And I spend time with Daryl Sutter, who always treated me great. You go, Daryl Sutter's, very respectful and great to be around. And so how do you're not cheering against teams and you're not cheering against those people. So I think it's a great question. Certainly one I've thought of. The one thing I want to make sure I don't do is go overboard the other way to try and prove to everybody, I'm not an Oilers guy. I'm not an Oilers guy. I'm not an Oilers guy.
Yeah.
I'm a Hockey Night in Canada guy for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 games.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple more quick questions for you. 20-year-old Gene Principe, when he broke into this, or 20-year-old Michael Ball would never believe that a Florida-based hockey team would be playing in the 6th straight Stanley Cup. Tampa 3, Florida 3. That's crazy.
No, you're right. Matthew Tkachuk was talking about that on media day, how, he told a neat story how he showed up in Florida. He was just traded from Calgary and I think he said he was picking up dinner and somebody kind of asked him, like, who are you? Or, what do you do? He says, oh, I'm a hockey player. He goes, a hockey player in Florida? You must suck. And, and he kind of laughed it off. And, they don't suck in Florida when it comes to the game of hockey. The Lightning have done what they've done. They previously won a Stanley Cup against the Calgary Flames in 2004. The Lightning were so successful. The Panthers are 3 straight conference finals. So there's something, in the water on those beaches that seems to be adding up properly for the Florida-based teams, and they've earned it. And to get to 3 straight is really a challenge. And the one thing I would say, Michael, Oilers are unbelievably hungry, right? They got so close and didn't win. Florida's pretty hungry too. And I'm not saying they're more or less, but if anyone thinks that they're satisfied with one Stanley Cup, imagine asking Connor McDavid, let's say they win the Cup, let's say a year from now they're in the Cup final again. You think he's going to say, you know what, if we win it, great. If we don't, not a big deal. When you get a taste of something, you want it again. And that's what Florida is thinking going into this great matchup with Edmonton.
It's hard to get back. It's funny when you were saying that about, I was in Florida. I was in Fort Lauderdale, and I was walking down the street 2 years ago with my significant other, who's just a casual sports fan, because of me. And I'm walking by a restaurant and sitting street side with Sergei Bobrovsky, Matthew Tkachuk, and I believe it was Bennett. And she goes, why don't you go take a picture with them? And I'm like, and nobody's bugging them. They're sitting there. You couldn't do that in Edmonton if you're McDavid. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I don't do that stuff. But it just paints a picture like McDavid and Draisaitl wouldn't be able to do that. Hyman wouldn't be able to do that.
No, it's a totally different world. And I mean, that's not the player's fault. Bill Zito was talking about how, around Edmonton, the way they've built Ice District, you got 30,000 plus people here. It is incredible. Around Florida, beautiful arena. Basically, they don't really have public transit into the arena from what I've seen. So a lot of parking spots, Great spot, though, for tailgating. And he said, he joked that the first year, I think it was conference final, maybe Stanley Cup final, how, there weren't a lot of people out there, but they had a hot dog sponsor and, they sent out hot dogs and drinks for all the people. And, he said, I'm not sure they knew who we were. Well, they know who they are now. And yeah, sure, if you go on a beach in Fort Lauderdale and you're Matthew Tkachuk, you mentioned it, you can have dinner or Sergei Bobrovsky or Sam Bennett. But I think it's important for people to know that once you're in the arena, there's a lot of Panthers fans. There were a lot of Stars fans. There's a lot of Golden Knights fans. There's a lot of LA Kings fans, the teams that the Oilers have played and or beaten so far in the playoffs. I mean, those spots are filled with supporters. And yeah, I know we're always going to think differently because we're from Canada, but I think it's important to respect what they've done, those fan bases and the support that they've had. Are they like Edmonton? Are they like Calgary? Are they like Winnipeg, whiteouts? Maybe, maybe not, but I don't make the connection that makes them inferior or that they don't know hockey. We're always going to think of it as our game, as we say on Rogers. But they can have a little slice of it too, and especially when it comes to winning Stanley Cups.
Yeah, so I took listeners down on that trip, and we went to a couple of games, and I was amazed at how I had a different misconception of what it would be like. It's actually a nice rink. The fans were into it, and you're right. The fans that were there were into it. Okay, I'll leave you on this. So it's funny how this season went. I think this is the Oilers' year because they kind of sleptwalked at times through the regular season injuries, and they're only human. And they end up with home ice advantage somehow in the Stanley Cup final. And I really think that is going to be the difference. I have the Oilers in 5, but I do think if it goes the distance, which some people are saying that home ice will push them over the top. That's how
I would agree. And I think, like Leon Draisaitl said, it's nice to have home ice, but listen, they've got to play at least 4 games. So it's going to be even, 2 for us, 2 for them. It's after that where the home ice then could really become an advantage. And I think Edmonton, listen, when you fall 3 straight to start a cup final or any playoff series, it's wow. It is really, really an incredible challenge to come back and win. It's hard to believe that the Oilers won, 3 straight cup final games, but didn't win the Stanley Cup. That's because the other team won 3 straight as well. So I think it's going to be a nice way to start for Edmonton. It is amazing that they didn't have it against LA or Vegas or Dallas. And now they've got it in the final. This arena, this city is alive and well when it comes to the Oilers. And I think the big difference, Michael, last year, I didn't have too many people that I would see out and about sort of predicting. It's not that they didn't think Edmonton would win, the fans, but not so much, they're going to do it in this or do it in that. But I was out at an event Saturday and people couldn't stop talking about the Oilers. And I would say virtually every single one had a prediction. They're going to win in 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. And so I think the fans have taken last year's experience and feel like you feel. It's their time. Florida feels differently. And I guess, buddy, that's why we play the games.
Well, and that's why we get a broadcast. I'm 2013 Grey Cup. I'm on the sidelines for the Riders' home victory, and the confetti's falling. I'm interviewing players, and I felt like I was in a movie I didn't belong in. I hope you get that same experience, whether you want to admit you're cheering for the Oilers or not, and that you're at the bench interviewing all the Oiler guys as they finally raise the Stanley Cup.
All right, Michael. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm really looking forward to a great series and a nice way to finish off the hockey season.
Take care, man. Thank you.
You too, buddy.
Awesome, bro. Thanks. Well, just ahead of Giulio Caravatta of the BC Lions Radio Network, former Canadian quarterback, it's appropriate to get to our top 20 Canadians as chosen by Ballsy Uncut. I polled a bunch of football minds who want to remain anonymous, and we've come up with the top 20 Canadians. Now, if there was any discrepancies, I had the final vote in my mind because it's my podcast. And so here's my top 20. Doesn't mean that it's the gospel, although I generally think I'm right, as you know, if you know my brand and know me. But here are my top 20 Canadians. At number 20, from the Ottawa Redblacks, offensive lineman Drew Desjardins. At number 19, safety for the Edmonton Elks, a guy who was on this podcast and is a great guy, Royce Metier. He's at number 19. At number 18, Regina's own Patrick Neufeld of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, offensive lineman, one of 6 Regina area kids on that Blue Bomber team. Number 17, former Bomber and current BC Lions center, Michael Couture. I got him at 17. At 16, got one of the Philpott boys, Tyson Philpott at number 16, receiver for the Montreal Alouettes. At number 15 on the top 20 Canadian list, Cam Judge, linebacker, Toronto Argonauts. Was with Calgary, goes back down east, was a rider player as well. Had a decent year, but not an all-star type of year last year. Kind of, I don't take a step back, but he had a not as great a year. Maybe Father Time creeping up on him, but he's still a great football player. Cam Judge at 15. At 14, Riders receiver Samuel Emlis, former 7th overall pick, is coming into his own. And so I've got him at 14. And they need him to take a big step this year as a receiver to help out with more weaponry for Harrison Mayer in Rider Nation. At number 13, Tyrell Ford, cornerback for the Edmonton Elks, comes over to play with his brother Trey. Tyrell had 5 interceptions last year at the field corner spot and got big money, highest paid defensive back in the CFL. I think hard money, $230 with incentives. It's $236,000 for Tyrell Ford. So Ed Hervey believes in him. Number 12, another guy that comes over courtesy of Ed Hervey's wallet with the Edmonton Elks. Well, it's Larry Thompson's wallet, but Ed Hervey's spending the money. That would be Robbie Smith, highest paid defender, defensive lineman. You remember him from 2022 with the Argos, wreaking havoc on the Bombers offensively from that D-line spot, blocking a field goal attempt at the end of the game here in the 2022 Grey Cup. Robbie Smith at 12. At number 11, Retta Cramdy. I've always liked his energy and the way he plays. I can tell you from personal experience and talking with my son plays with Retta in Winnipeg and just loves the guy, says he's an outstanding athlete and a smart football player. I've got Retta Cramdy at 11. Number 10, offensive lineman David Beard. Beard was with Hamilton, back in Edmonton, and if I'm not mistaken, he's a former U of A Golden Bear. I hope I'm right with that. I believe I am, but David Beard comes in at number 10. At number 9, Kian Schaefer-Baker, KSB. They need him to remain healthy. He's a big body that can run a lot faster than he looks. He's got football speed and had a good offseason working out. My kid worked out with him with Dan Farthing. And so KSB comes in at number 9. At number 8, he maybe doesn't have the straight line speed, but he's still got some wiggle. He finds a way to get open, and he's got great hands, and he's a good leader. At number 8, I got Nick Dembski of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. At number 7, this guy led receivers last year, came into his own. He was one of the guys when I was the voice of the Riders. I was hoping they'd re-sign this guy, and they didn't, and he went to BC because it was a better fit. He's joined us a couple times on this podcast. Number 7 in terms of top 20 Canadians, Justin McInnes. Right behind quarterback Trey Ford of the Edmonton Elks, who's been given, like I said, a longer leash. They've paid him a lot of money and put faith in him to be their quarterback of the now and the future. So Trey Ford, the number 6 Canadian on the top 20 list. At number 5, Nathan Rourke of the BC Lions. Kind of appropriate. Those two meet in a week 1 matchup in Vancouver. Nathan Rourke, if he's close to 2022 Nathan Rourke, and by all accounts, he's looking like that. It's going to depend on how that offensive line holds up, and it's got some bad news. David Foucault, who is there on the O-line, Buck Pierce, head coach, said he's going to be out for a while. So it'll be interesting to see how that O-line holds up. But Nathan Rourke at number 5, he'd be number 1 in my books for Canadians if he's closer to 2022. This is the list of the players as I see them going into the season. It'll be interesting, and I'll maybe do this mid-season, revisit it. In fact, I will revisit it with the people I talked to before. So I'll save these lists and we'll revisit it. At number 4, Marc-Antoine Dequoy. He's north of 30. Players start to slow down. He's been hampered by a little bit of injuries, but when he's on the field, he can make plays. He's a difference maker. They did draft Nate Boschman out of Calgary to back him up, the Defensive Player of the Year in U Sports. But Marc-Antoine Dequoy is the future right now, the present right now, I guess, leader on that defense in the secondary and the 4th best Canadian, in my opinion. At number 3, came back from the NFL after trying to crack the roster of the Detroit Lions. Maybe had a bit of an NFL hangover too, just like his teammate Nathan Rourke. But at number 3, I've got Mathieu Betts, who is the most sacks in a season for a Canadian, beating the old BC line, Brent Johnson, back in the day. The number 2 top Canadian, he was my number 3 top player, but my number 2 top Canadian. Now, this is one I put personally. A lot of people had him a bit further down the list, but when I circled back and asked what they thought, they didn't totally outright disagree or call me crazy. The number 2 Canadian in the CFL is Logan Ferland of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Anytime on the offensive line, you could play all the different positions and sometimes multiple positions in a game and do it without missing a beat. Unless you've played on the O-line or really appreciate the game, you don't understand how incredible that is. And he's going to be called upon big time now with the Riders down Gagnon, down McEwen. Jacob Brammer now has a wonky back. So Logan Ferland is number 2 top Canadian and might be the Riders' offensive MVP or have to be early on this year. That's no joke. And the top Canadian, once again, an MOP type of player, once again coming off an MOP season, Brady Oliveira, running back, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, local guy in Winnipeg, former North Dakota Fighting Hawk, hardworking guy, puts his body on the line for the team, and as the season rolls on, he's like a fine wine. He gets better with age during the season. So I got Brady Oliveira number 1. So Oliveira 1, Ferland 2, Marc-Antoine Dequoy, Betts 3, Marc-Antoine Dequoy 4, Nathan Rourke 5, Trey Ford 6, Justin McInnes 7, Nick Dembski 8, KSB 9, David Beard 10, Retta Cramdy 11, Robbie Smith 12, Tyrell Ford 13, Sam Emilus 14, Cam Judge 15, Tyson Philpott 16, Michael Couture 17, 18 Patty Neufeld, 19 Royce Metier, and 20 Drew Desjardins. Your top 20 Canadians according to Ballsy Uncut, because yes, we have great players incorporating the Americans and globals, but we are the Canadian Football League, and it's important to promote our own. That is what I do. That's what I will always do, and I make no apologies for it. Just before I go, I want to say a couple of things. And actually, I'll say this, and then I'll get into my one suggestion with Giulio Caravatta. I do want to say this. Condolences go out to Milt Stiegel and his family on the passing of his son Chase, 20 years old, just shy of 21 at DePaul in the Chicago area, soccer player. Apparently they found him in his dorm, unconscious and dead. Just devastating. I can't even put into words what that would feel like. I don't even want to think about what that would feel like. You got to go on living, but I don't know how you would. My thoughts and prayers to Milt Stiegel and his family. Milt's been a great advocate, Cincinnati guy, but an advocate of the CFL and a legend in the game. So yeah, just devastating. Don't know the cause of death, although I guess he has been, as the story goes, I've been reading, prone to seizures in the past. Just terrible. So my thoughts and prayers go out to Milt Stiegel and his family. And I know the Bombers are touched by this too, so to Bomber Nation as well. All right, coming up, Giulio Caravatta, the BC Lions radio network, to break things down. And I'm going to bring up a point that I think Stuart Johnston, the new commissioner, needs to address, and it has to do with our Prime Minister. This time, we need this commissioner to have a plan, not like the other guy. This is Ballsy Uncut. Well, Giulio, we're here to talk football, but you're a hockey guy. I got the Oilers in 5. Who's winning the cup?
Man, I mean that's going to be a hell of a series. You got Oilers in 5. That's
yeah.
You thinking Florida's that's it? Their run is over? Or?
They've played a lot of hockey. So has Edmonton, but I don't think McDavid and Draisaitl will be denied. And I think it's they win the first 2 in Edmonton, lose 1 in Florida, then win the next 2, and that's all she wrote.
Well, I would like to see Edmonton win. I just don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be in 5. This series, I think, is going to be tough and hard nosed right to the very end. I think it goes 7, and I hope. Having watched Florida for the last couple of rounds, man, and Edmonton, I have to give Edmonton credit. They play. It's not just about offense. They can play defense.
Yeah,
so it should be a good series.
Okay, so let's get right into the CFL things. We'll kind of do storyline with each team. Let's start with your team, the BC Lions. For me, it's Nathan Rourke. Will it be the 2022 Nathan Rourke or the one that had the NFL hangover last year?
Yeah, well, that's the question that everyone's asking, and all I can tell you is that what I've seen and during training camp and preseason, and Nathan just looks a little bit more relaxed and like he's enjoying himself. Um, I think he puts a lot of pressure on himself to be successful, and he works extremely hard on all aspects of his game. But it was a tough scenario last year, the situation that he came into. I think a fresh off season with a new coach. He just, like, as I said, watching him through training camp, you can just see that he's enjoying himself a little bit more and enjoying his teammates, and they're enjoying him. And now it's about putting it on the field for real, right, Ballsy? Like, every team is going to say the same things about themselves coming out of training camp, that they feel like they've got the right pieces, and now it's about putting it all together. And so we're just going to have to wait and see for Saturday night if the BC Lions can get off to a good start.
So it's Winnipeg's division to lose. They've proven that over the last 5 years. For me, can they've actually got 8 new there's only 60 because I'm invested in it now. There's 67 first-year players in the CFL. Winnipeg has 8, so they've tried to change things over, but we've been waiting forever for the Bombers to fall off the cliff. I mean, they'll go as far as Zach Collaros takes them, I think.
Oh, no question. Like you, I mean, I think everybody in the league has been thinking to themselves at some point that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to start to drop off, and they don't. And I think that speaks to the organization, right, from top to bottom. They're able to find players. Their scouting department, their general manager, their head coach, they're able to just, keep it rolling. And you have to give them credit. And until someone knocks them off, you really, like you say, they have Zach Collaros, and when you have a guy like that, you're gonna have a chance to win each and every game. So it's going to be a tough year again going through Winnipeg. They're going to be motivated because the Grey Cup's in Winnipeg. That they're going to want to be there at home.
Now it's a week to week league, the CFL, and it's a year to year. You build your team, but generally it's a lot of free agent signings. That doesn't seem to work out very well for the Riders. It seems in a lot of cases, especially on the offensive line. Gagnon's down, McEwen's down. Jacob Brammer didn't practice today with a back. Olette's cut his weight, but he came in with some hip issues. I had the Riders finishing first, actually, when I looked at it on paper, but I'm not so sure now with these injuries. What would you say is the biggest storyline for the Riders?
Well, I think first of all, what Corey Mace was able to do there in his first year, I think, he's really done a tremendous job there, and what he was able to do with that defense. You think about what that defense was doing early on when they didn't have Trevor Harris. They were keeping them in ball games with that special teams unit. So, it's the one thing that I always say to people when they say about, where do you see, teams ending up, and how do you see the division laying itself out? It's the one part of the equation I've learned over the years that has a big part in this is injuries. Like, are you able to sustain injuries and keep it moving? Like, what's your depth like? Because at some point, all the teams are going to be tested, whether it's a receiver or an O lineman or a D lineman, whatever a case may be. You've got to be able to have some people there ready to go. And so that's why the depth part of it is such an important component. But I really, I think Saskatchewan, if they stay healthy, if Trevor Harris stays healthy, Corey Mace has got a great defense, and anytime you can put great defense on the field, you're going to give yourself a chance to win. So, I have every, if they stay healthy, Saskatchewan's going to be right there in the end.
So I had put together a list of the 5 most impactful offseason moves. I had Rourke and Buck Pierce together in BC at number 2. At number 3, I had Vernon Adams Jr. going to Calgary. At 4, I had, I think, Kenny Lawler going to Hamilton to help Bo Levi Mitchell. And at 5, I had Gino Lewis and Stanbeck helping out Ottawa because they finished, if you remember, Addison playing running back in the East semifinal. But the number 1 move was Chris Morris taking over the Edmonton franchise. He's turned around everything he's ever touched, whether it be high school or the U of A Golden Bears. and he's endeavoring to do that with Edmonton. But the biggest storyline would be Mark Killam, head coach, finally, and having to win there to get the fans to come back.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree with Chris Morris. I was around during his playing career, so I think that what Edmonton is trying to do, and Ed Hervey, obviously, they're trying to bring back the great tradition of the Edmonton Eskimos and now Elks. So that's their priority. They want to. As far as I can remember, they were the gold standard, and I think that they've dropped a little bit, and I think it's really hurt that organization and hurt. Obviously, the most important thing is their fan base. So the priority to win there is big, and Mark Killam is going to get a great opportunity. He's a young coach who's been around this league for a long time, and I'm always excited about getting these kinds of guys like Mark and Buck getting these kinds of opportunities, because we need to see that next wave of new young coaches. So there's lots of pressure on that team, right? That they've got to win, and they got to win early, because if they don't, then it's going to be here we go again. So Ed went out and really attacked free agency and tried to fill in some big holes, and he did with some very, very good players. So they're going to be interesting. Trey Ford, how does he respond to being the guy? That's going to be another thing, right? He wanted the keys to the car. He's got them, and now he has to produce. So it's going to be interesting to see. The West is going to be tough.
It is.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be, like you said, week to week, man. You're going to have to bring it, because there's not, again, and this is right through the whole league. There's not an off week. You don't get a gimme. There's no gimmies.
No, I love that. Hey, and lastly, in the West, it's VA going to Calgary. You know him. He was a classy guy.
Yeah.
It was his team, then he got hurt. But I'll tell you this, the one thing with VA, though, is he's never been able to hold on to a starting job for one reason or another. Maybe some of his fault, maybe not his fault. It'll be interesting to see if he can take the reins, because this is probably his last legitimate shot to be a long-term starter somewhere.
Well, and in his defense a little bit for last year, he got hurt, right? And he was having a great year, and it's unfortunate, but that's part of not being able to finish the season. But like you said, having to get to know him over the last few years here in BC, I got nothing but great things to say about Vernon Adams. He is a consummate professional. He's a very, very nice young man, who puts in a lot of work to be good. So I really think going to Calgary and getting an opportunity to get coached by Dave Dickinson is just going to do nothing but great things for him. Like, Dave is one of the best coaches in the Canadian Football League. I have so much respect for him, and anytime you get a chance to sit down and talk quarterbacking with him, you're going to learn something. So even though VA is a veteran, I think he's going to really, really flourish under a guy like Dave, because Dave's like the quarterback whisperer, right? He just always seems to have the right answers. And, I hope for his sake, for Vernon's sake, that he can continue what he's been doing the last few years, because he has really done a very, very nice job quarterbacking. He seems to get a little bit wiser, and he gets more and more comfortable playing the position. And when you get to his stage of his career, right, like, you're not going to throw too much at him that he hasn't seen or experienced before. And for quarterbacks, that's a nice place to be. So I think he's really going to benefit there, and they're going to love having him as the face of the franchise, because as I said, Vernon's a first-class individual.
Who's got more pressure? Mark Killam? Now, that seems weird because he's a first-year coach, but you just said it yourself. They got to win. Like, they have to win.
Yeah.
Mark Killam, Dave Dickinson, or Corey Mace? Because Corey Mace is, I'll lay this out. The Elks need to win. So I know he's a first-year coach, but there's a lot of pressure to win and get, because it used to be an Oiler Eskimo town. Now it's Oilers, and the Elks are barely relevant. They're starting to come back, but they haven't won there since Jesus was a carpenter on home turf, okay? So, and back when you played, if you won a game in Edmonton, you were lucky, okay? Now anybody can win, it seems. So, Killam, Corey Mace. Hey, Corey Mace did a great job last year, but you also don't have many times in the West where you go 0-7-1 and still finish in second place. So I don't know if it was the Riders so great or the rest of the conference kind of crapped the bed. So, and Rider fans are tired of Like, I don't think a home playoff game and losing to the Bombers in the West Final is going to cut it. Like, they have to get to the Grey Cup. I know every team will say it, but Grey Cup or bust for the Riders. And then you look at Calgary, Dave Dickinson. They don't, the fan support is kind of, and they were 6-12 and got into the playoffs because the Riders soiled the sheets a couple years ago. And then last year they missed the playoffs. So I've laid out the case. Who's got more heat? Dickinson, Killam, Mace.
Oh man, that's a tough question. I mean, if right off the top of my head, I would imagine that, and it's a bit unfair because it is his first year as a coach, but Mark Killam, given that organization and the the amount of pressure there is to win there, just because there's so much more involved with the fans too, right? Like it's been such a struggle there the last few years that I just really think that they've got to come out of the gate. And that's unfair pressure on a first year coach, but that's just the reality of the situation. I would imagine that Dave also too has got a lot of pressure on him, right? I know that there was a lot of people there screaming for his job at the end of last year, but I think that management did the smart thing there, bringing him back. Yep. So if I'm to answer your question, I think it would be Killam. I think Mark has probably got a lot of pressure on him to come out of the gate. I think the other guys got a little bit of leeway because of their Corey had a great year last year, and Dave has proven in the past that he can coach a championship team. Mark is starting his journey, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him early on.
I'm the most intriguing thing for me out east. I don't think any of the coaches, like, you have to win. I get it. You're in a win now business, so everybody has pressure. But Dice, I think, just got a contract extension. Milanovic is in his second year. Dinwiddie's proven. I think maybe he's the best coach in the league. Like, I like Mike O'Shea, but Dinwiddie's beat Mike O'Shea with backup quarterbacks last two times they've met in the Grey Cup. And then, of course, Jason Moss has proven that he can coach and win. So I don't think there's as much pressure on the East coaches. But the biggest thing for me out East, Bo Levi Mitchell. If Bo Levi Mitchell could play like last year, I think Hamilton's a definite threat.
Well, yeah, there's no question about that. They getting Kenny Lawler as somebody they've got themselves a game break, and simply put, Bo had an unbelievable year. And he had a little bit up and down too, right? Like Milanovic was getting on him at times as well. So I can only suspect that's only going to get, Bo's been around so long and is so good that that he's going to figure things out and get things going. And now that he's got a weapon like Lawler, I think they're gonna do a great job. Where's the weak team in the East?
Well, the only thing the other interesting thing to talk about, I've talked about it with others. It's great talking to you about this. So Cody wins a Grey Cup and he goes to Edmonton because he doesn't want to be a backup to Davis Alexander. McLeod Bethel Thompson's brought in. He doesn't want to be a backup to Trey Ford, but they both end up being backups in different scenarios, which is probably better. Like, they're okay in different cities, but wouldn't be in the existing cities they were in. Yeah. So is Davis Alexander the real deal? That's the other big thing right there.
Well, here's the thing, is that at some point, and we got a pretty good sample size of Davis Alexander, right? Like, at some point, you have to believe in your ability to evaluate talent and understand and know, hey, this guy has what it takes. This guy doesn't have what it takes. They clearly believe that he has the ability to be the starter, or else they wouldn't have done what they did. But again, I think, you've gone and taken that up, you've taken that chance, but they've also done a very good job in giving themselves a nice little backup plan, right?
Yeah.
So you look at the experience around the league at the backup position. Like, has it been any better than this?
No, it's pretty good.
I mean, every team has realized that you've got to have someone ready to go, because if we've seen it too often where if you don't have a proven commodity as your backup, you're asking for it. So it's one of those things that they have to be able to have that insurance, right? So time is going to tell, but I think for a few of these teams, I think there's not going to be much of a hesitation going to their backups if need be.
I wasn't sure. Lastly, I wasn't sure. Like, I wasn't totally sold on Drew Brown. but I thought he had a heck of an Eastern semifinal in that big wild shootout. Even though they lost the game to Toronto, I think it was a case of Toronto was a better team than Ottawa. Ottawa didn't even have a freaking running back, for gosh sakes. That's how much they want to get rid of Raquel Armstead. They had Braylon Addison play running back. So they basically went 6 receivers the whole game. And I thought Drew Brown, that's when I was like, okay, Drew Brown's got something here. How do you feel as a former quarterback watching Drew Brown play?
I like Drew. I mean, again, I think that they're I mean, he's again, the sample size is there. He's shown he's shown that he can play. He's got all the tools, he's got all the ability. And here's the thing too, is that it's the one thing about quarterbacks in this league is that I mean, it's not easy.
No.
And it's one of those positions that some guys just need the time to grow into it, to understand what the pressures are and what it is to play in games that are tight and where the anxiety level rises. And those are things that you only experience in games. And so the hope is that when you have those experiences that you can build on them and that you can get better. And I think in a lot of these young quarterbacks cases that you're seeing that growth. Like this league has so long been one of these places where if you're a quarterback, you're going to get, a couple of 3-4 games. Maybe if you're lucky, you get in there. And if you don't do a good enough job, then you're out. We're moving on to the next guy. And it's hard because experience plays such a part in being a good quarterback. So, and it's hard to get the experience, right? So it's one of those things that for all these young guys, I really do hope. But what I've seen of Drew Brown, what I saw in Winnipeg and what I saw in Ottawa, he's a good young quarterback that just needs some time to grow and develop.
So lastly, I'm going to throw this one at you because you were a Canadian quarterback in this league and what you just said there. They paid him money, Trey Ford. They need to win. They've got Cody, who's won a Grey Cup and a veteran, but do they give him a long leash? Because if he's from Mississippi, he probably gets a long leash. He's a Canadian. Does he get a long leash?
Well, I will say this, that, having been there when Trey has played, there is a certain electricity that comes to the crowd when he's in the game. And you can't buy that, right? Like that's something you have, and he has it. So, but I also do see the other side of that, right? That how much rope are you going to give him if he starts to struggle, right? Like when you do have a guy who is a Grey Cup champion behind him. So it is one of those, it's a slippery slope for a coach because you're dealing with confidence, you don't want to ruin his confidence, but at the same time, it's about winning. So, and I think it's probably about the degree of difficulty. Like if he's really struggling, then I think that's why you brought Cody Fajardo in. Right? And that's the nature of the beast too, right? Like, hey, I want to see Trey Ford be super successful. I want to see the Canadian quarterbacks be super successful. Obviously, guys, I've got a sentimental value towards that. But at the same time, you need to earn it, right? You need to play well. And he's getting that opportunity as a starter, and he needs to be able to fulfill the pressure that goes along with that. And I have no doubt that he can do that. But it's now just a case of getting on the field and doing it. And I think Jordan McSimic is going to find out what he does well, and he's going to build on those things and use his athleticism to his advantage, because that's when he is dangerous. When he is out and about and making things happen, he can make things happen that very few people can.
A lot of Snoop Dogg fans. Looks like you guys are going to have a sellout, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Going to be electric down there, really. First game of the year, a big rival, and then Snoop Dogg, man, I tell you, they've done it. Amar Doman, what can you say about him? I mean, he just keeps outdoing himself every year. So we keep thinking, how much bigger can this get? But after 50 Cent, now this is happening. So he's setting up quite a legacy for himself, because every year he's going to have to do something big.
This is what I don't understand, though. You got Doman there who gets it, but he also sits on the board, does he not?
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't a guy say to for instance, Amar Doman is top notch. I've met the guy. He obviously is, okay? He can't be happy. I'm all for the streaming of the preseason games, okay? I watched your broadcast, listened to it, BC Calgary, the first one, okay? That was one of the better ones, like not only in terms of your broadcast, but the actual, tuning in, it didn't crash. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
if you're going to do something, do it right or don't do it. And I just can't believe that Amar Dome and Bob Young, these guys would want to have their name tied to some of that stuff. Like, I just don't get how it can be so good in BC, but as a league, we
Yeah.
can't get it right. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's you know, if I'm not lying. I mean, that's it is a frustration even for us. Like last week, our stats package crashed after the the beginning of the third quarter, right? So it is a frustration, but I also understand it's also things that they're going to try to work through. And I know that they've probably heard about all that stuff, and they're going to try to work through it. That's all you can ask. I get the frustration.
Yeah.
You mean I understand that. Like I'd like to see all the games being get broadcast on TSN. You know, what I mean, I would love to see that in the beginning, but I understand the cost and all that other stuff. So,
This is,
I get it.
And
I get
lastly, we've got a new commissioner in here who hopefully is going to get us a new TV deal, and he knows about streaming and all this other stuff. I've never had him on, so I'm just going by what I hear. But I see Mark Carney give another 1.8 billion or 2 billion to the CBC, okay? And I'm like, if I'm Stu Johnson or I'm the head of U Sports, I'm going to Mark Carney, I'm going to Ottawa, and I'm saying, listen, if you are truly a Canadian broadcaster and taxpayers' money, then where's my game of the week on the CBC for the CFL or even a U Sports game of the week? Like, give me a break. That's as Canadiana as it gets. If that's what we're doing, if we're giving our taxpayers' money to the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, which I don't support, but I'm telling you, if we're doing that, then let's see. This is Canadiana as it gets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be nice to see. I mean, as you said, if we got a guy who is that's what he's done over the last 30 years. He's been in that industry, right? Is negotiate those kinds of deals, and I think he understands the. I had a chance to talk to him at our halftime show, and that's one of the things I think he understands is having to get the games out on a number of different mediums because that's the reality that we live in. So. I think if you put together a plan and like you say, you go to the government and you ask them, but I think you got to have that plan in place.
Yeah.
You got to have. You can't just go there and say, "Hey, we want the money." Like I think we'd already tried that once and it didn't work out too well. So I would like to, because you're right. If that's the case, then have a plan. Go with a plan and see what they say. But it'd be nice to see that a game of the week on CBC. I would love to see something like that.
Yeah. Hey, lastly, I don't know if you're predictions. Maybe you don't want to pick against the Lions in November in Winnipeg on the frozen tundra of Princess Auto Field. Who's playing? Who's in the Grey Cup?
I'm gonna go. I do believe that I believe the Lions have got a good team. I think they could be a little bit of a sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
They could quietly come up on people because I don't think people are taking them too seriously. So obviously, I'm going to be a homer, and I'm going to say the Lions, and I'm going to say the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Okay, good one. BC Hamilton. That's a good one, man. All right, thanks for your time, Giulio. It's always great catching up with you, and I can't wait. 2025 is going to be fun.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.